All right, welcome to Resilient Voices and Beyond. It is a beautiful day, but more importantly, I'm excited for today's episode. I have a very special guest with me here today, and not going to get on a tangent or anything, but she's just a wonderful person. I met her was like almost a year or two ago, and we just networked and connected. And she was telling me she was getting ready to put out a book, and I was so excited. But I'm not gonna give y'all too much details because I want her to share who she is. But without further ado, I'm gonna have her introduce herself.
Yeah, Michael, it's really good to see you since the last time that we spoke for sure. Hello, my name is Angela, and well, I'm a cat mom to two crazy little kittens, Luna and Felix. I'm a wife to an amazing person who is also named Michael. Um, and I guess other things you guys will learn more about me throughout this episode, but just really honored to be here and excited to share the space with you.
Thank you. And the honor is mine. Like, you are completely a wonderful person. And we're going to get to be able to explore that wonderfulness. um, all right. Well, for you guys that's been following me, and I believe you've listened to a couple of my episodes, I like to dive deep in there. So you guys, as listeners, can get to know the individual that is here with me, and also just be able to place like, wow, this person, okay, I can rock with this person and so forth. But without further ado, my first question is, what did being in care look like for yourself? What was that experience?
um, that experience for me was very confusing, um, honestly depressing, frustrating. A lot of times in my experience, I didn't feel like I was being heard or uh, my need to stay connected with my birth family and my birth siblings was very much um, quieted or used as leverage for different punishments with various different situations. So I was placed into care when I was 16 with my siblings, and unfortunately, after our kinship placement didn't work out, we were separated by gender, and from there, mentally, I just kind of didn't really know how to cope since my siblings and I had a very strong bond, and kept us in survival mode. We survived a lot of the things together. And so to be separated for the first time caused a lot of trauma. And we had to continuously navigate and create our own identity within the system. So over time, I ended up trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. Luckily, I was connected with different supportive adults like my CASA, which is also known as a guardian ad litem in North Carolina, my therapist, um, and a few other incredible mentors in my school system and stuff. And so I ended up graduating high school, and then I went to college. And that's, I think, where depression really hit me because I was still in care, but I had a sibling that ended up getting put into a behavioral health facility, and just hearing a lot of the horrors that that sibling was going through, and not really feeling like I could do anything about it, as well as still worrying about my brothers and still wanting to have a connection with my birth family, but trying to navigate, you know, teenage to adulthood and all the things I wasn't taught, realizing like there's not much that I have control over, but still trying to focus like into my studies and like, okay, what can I do about this? And, so while I was in care, I also did a lot of advocacy all throughout North Carolina. And then I ended up in Washington, D.C. Through various different organizations. But my plan was to stay in care until I could age out. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. And so I just kind of tried to navigate what my life was going to be like. Um, and I don't know if you want me to go into that too, Michael.
Definitely, definitely. I'm gonna touch on a couple things before we go into that. So essentially, you went into care at age 16 at the start of your transition,
Yeah.
into adulthood. And wow, I'm just thinking about that. Like, that's a really rough spot to kind of be like, okay, now we're gonna have instability, So
Right.
how do and is it safe to say from your experience and your story, um, that mental health was one of the biggest barriers throughout that period?
Absolutely, because at that time it was a lot of depression and just like all these, and this, depression is a symptom of all the other things. It was unaddressed
Right.
emotions, not knowing who I could trust really, who I could really talk about these different things, what I could really have control over, and not really being able to fully express my needs without there being some form of a judgment, or because I'm a certain age I should know certain things. um, and also a lot of the biases that came along with just being who I am. I was a brown girl in care, so it's just a lot of things that kind of were already placed onto me. And so recognizing that and like, okay, there's certain gatekept resources that I'm not able to tap into because people already have these different perceptions of me or don't want to share and create
Mhm.
confusion around it. So absolutely. Mental health was a huge piece in that.
Okay, so and remind me if any of my questions, you want to pass on or whichever. But so you went in at age 16, so that was high school and so forth. Can you kind of explain how did that work out for you? Because a lot of times, we try to find like the perfect match, or help that experience be good for people who are in foster homes or in residential facilities. But what did that look like for yourself trying to graduate high school, experiencing all this?
Yeah, so at that time I was very I had like no hope at that time. Like mentally I was just kind of like, well, this is it. I'm in foster care now. It escalated to this point. And even though at the time foster care was probably the best option that I had, given the options I was given,
Hmm.
but I was in a very, very low state of like, I don't really see the point of continuing life. And
Hmm.
so luckily I was paired, like I said, with my therapist. And what was so helpful with my therapist at that time was that for the first time I was able to vocalize my life experiences from start up until that moment. And so it kind of, reflecting on that, I noticed that what it did for me was get it out. Like it wasn't just bouncing around in my head and bouncing around in my body, it was out. And I had recounted this experience and I said to myself, like, wow, this really happened to me. And I'm sure many other people, once you recount your experience, you cannot believe, like, wow, that was really my story. That is really what I went through. And so I think it gave me a lot of power in order to like vocalize that, have someone that could look at me after I said all that and say, like, and something is still, possible for you. Like, whatever you want to do in your life, it's still possible, because that's what I needed to hear. I didn't need to be lectured on all the other things of like what wasn't going right, but really focus on like the possibility of my dreams and my hopes and what I desired in my life was still possible.
Definitely, definitely. That's amazing. Um, so how important was the supportive roles that these adults played in your life, as far as your therapist, your GAL? I don't know if you mentioned a caseworker too, but how important at that time, how crucial was therapy? Like, did you automatically recognize, like, yeah, this is where I need to be, or did it take some time to be like, I don't know about this, but like it can't hurt, like
Yeah.
um how crucial and how receptive was you to those supports?
So actually, I had sought therapy out because I didn't know if there was anything quote unquote like wrong or if I was displaying anything unhealthily.
Mm-hmm.
But I did know that I needed to talk to someone that could pinpoint that for me and kind of steer me in the right direction if not. Um, and so I was very receptive to it because I thought that that was going to be very beneficial to me, as I knew like one day I want to be married and one day I want to have kids, and I don't want to go out into the world and I know I have all these different horrific things that have happened and just kind of like spew it on other people, um unintentionally or intentionally, and that wasn't the focus. So I was like, okay, how do I be proactive about it? And it was hard though. The first few therapists that I received, um, it wasn't a good match, and so I just had to navigate that and really be honest about what my needs were and who exactly I would be comfortable opening up to. What kind of demographic would that look like? Like I had to be honest about that, and ended up working out. And that therapist that I'm talking about, she's still in my life, and she actually wrote the prologue to my book.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, because I know I live in a different state, so things lay out a little bit differently, as far as like GALs and caseworkers. Um, what did that look like, as far as those relationships for you, because you were at a crucial spot. You needed things done. You needed people to listen. Like, look, I'm 16, 17, so forth. Like, I got things that's flowing. Adulthood is knocking at the door.
Yeah.
So, what did that look like, with those relationships?
um well, honestly, with the case manager, what there wasn't that much of a relationship. At 16, it was very much okay, this case manager's checking in, to have a little checkbox to make sure everything is good. But I didn't really feel like that person was invested or honestly really cared. Um, but my garden litem in North Carolina, she was very much involved. And at first, it made me kind of push her away because there were things going on and I didn't know how to vocalize that. And I didn't want to like make things worse. Um, so that I guess that also touches into a lot of folks' trauma about like asking for help and like being in a not great situation, but
Mhm.
like not knowing how to vocalize that. And so the help is there, right? Like the guardian litem for me, she was there, but also not being able to receive that or have a space for that, because she would ask questions, do you feel safe in this placement? Do you and I just kind of shrug her off and you know walk away while she was talking, like a lot of things, because I didn't know how to vocalize that and I didn't want anybody getting in quote unquote trouble.
Mhm.
um so that was a huge part for me though, because she kept showing up, and she kept showing up so strongly and consistently that eventually I had to recognize that she really cared, right? And
Mhm.
actually have a conversation with her and let her know, like, these are my needs. Again, recognizing what are my needs and vocalizing them. And that's when things I think started to shift for me, and really being able to have a connected relationship with her and seeing her as an adult that really did genuinely care about me and really wanted to see me succeed and be healthy and be happy. And it wasn't just like a checkbox because, she was a volunteer. So I also knew she wasn't getting paid. Eventually I found out, okay, she's not getting paid. And I think that makes a huge difference, for a lot of youth, especially that have experienced trauma. Really, any person that has experienced trauma is kind of like a relief, like, oh, this person's not getting paid to do this. And then, you're just more receptive, and that's what the case was for me. And I was just like, okay, she did a lot through that time while I was in high school. So I also didn't have like a lot of clothes, and so she made sure to give me like $50 clothing cards, even though it was like places like the Goodwill or secondhand stores. I didn't really care. Like, I was like, I need these clothes. Like, I would much rather have like go through and find clothes and not have clothes. So she would go and like also ask for like grant money, all kinds of stuff to make sure that the needs that I shared with her were important specifically to me, not necessarily that it was the most important to the system. Those needs were advocated for, and she really tried to keep me at a state of like peace. Another thing that she did was, um, in the middle of I believe it was my, or the beginning of my senior year, uh, the system, foster care, had collectively decided to move me from the school. And she advocated for me to stay at that school because I had already moved a lot before foster care, and I'd been to like three different high schools. So she was just like, we don't need to move her again. But they did try to move me again. So I ended up moving to another high school for like 3 days. But she made sure to advocate for me. And I ended up going back and finishing high school with all my other peers. And that was really huge for me because it took a lot for me to be able to make friends at that school, because I had a lot of things that I was ashamed of, like being in foster care and not having the relationship with my siblings, and certain basic questions like, what does your mom do for a living? And now I'm like sad because I don't want to talk about my mom. Or, can we do a sleepover? And I'm like, certain things like that. And I finally started like opening up, not necessarily about that, but just like opening up in general and making friends. And then all of a sudden, I'm told I have to move. So it was huge that I was able to go back and just continue with my friends and graduate with my friends. Um, yeah, so I would say they were really huge components to my experience.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I actually had a GAL too, and she was very real with me, very real with me, and I appreciated that. So I can, relate to your experience. So, last couple of questions, about this time in your life, were you, what was placements like for you? Was there foster homes, group homes, like, and you said you didn't age out. So were you adopted or emancipated?
Yeah, so it was kinship care at first, and then I was in foster homes with my sister. Um, yeah, and then eventually I ended up signing myself back in, and I was on campus slash in foster homes, and then
Okay.
I did not age out, and I did not get adopted. I was kicked out.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well,
Yeah, I was kicked out. I was kicked out because I tried to report not being safe in a home. And
uh-huh.
yeah, my I didn't have a social worker. She had retired a couple years prior to that experience. And my case manager was very close with my foster parent. And I kind of was sharing with her hypothetically about what was happening in the house. and she just went and told my foster parent. And so, yeah, my foster parent was like basically, you know, very angry about that. She slammed the door when she got back to the house and told me to meet her in the kitchen, started yelling at me and all these different things. And, threatened to put her hands on me and other stuff. And the thing was, I wasn't trying to like get my foster parent in trouble or anything, which is why I said it in a hypothetical way. Like, what would happen if, specifically, what would happen if um, your foster parent is dating multiple men and they're coming in and out of the house and um, you don't feel safe because you don't know them and they have the key at random times. Um, and also your foster parent is, asking you to drink alcohol or to go party and do other things that you don't agree that you want to do because your own family history and your own decisions, and keeping you from getting your driver's license, not supporting what you specifically want to do, tells you to get a job at McDonald's, but you got a job at an internship for policy because that's your major. What do you do in these situations, and she just was like, well, I don't know, and all these different things, and went back and told my foster parents. So didn't end well for me. I was given a 7-day notice via email. I think that's important to be expressed by the supervising social worker of the division. And I made sure to find a place on Craigslist. I was like bawling my eyes out, and I didn't know what to do. That it was very, very abrupt. And then I moved out, and they ended up reaching out to me like a month later and asked me for my address because they said, "Oh, we're going to send you a gift or something." But I found out later after, when you get out and you find out like the steps of the protocol of what's supposed to happen, that they just wanted my email so they could close my case officially. It wasn't because and I never got that gift. So I was like, "Oh, tragic." So yeah, I got kicked out. I didn't get adopted or anything. I feel like every time I say that, it's just so abrupt. Like, yeah, I got kicked out. Um,
Wow.
but yeah,
Wow. I hear many different stories of people just being let go, terminated, kicked out of the system, and it's crazy to me to see that that's just how it happens. That's just what we do, and we are okay with that. You know,
yeah,
um, uh, wow, wow, that is extraordinary to me. But throughout all that, throughout having to be resilient, having to be strong, even when you wasn't really wanted to be strong, you persevere, because you're doing so many great things and so forth. So I want to kind of connect to that journey. You got kicked out, everything, happened and so forth. What was the start? You said you had an internship in policy and everything. What was the start of getting to where you are now? Got a workbook out, have the Black foster care handbook, advocating and all these different things that you're doing now. I'm pretty sure I'm leaving out a lot. But how did you get from that place of, well, you on your own to here?
right. Yeah. Well, I will say that I was doing a lot of advocacy while I was in care as well. And a part of different projects to do spoken word and photography. I was a part of this one project. What was it called? The Story of Foster Care, with this organization called the Empty Frames Initiative. And essentially, it was taking pictures and doing little story snippets about my foster care experience. And the Story of Foster Care is the book that was a collection of mine as well as other former foster youth, um, social workers, and foster parents. And we actually did a touring art gallery um, all throughout Raleigh, North Carolina. So I think that helped me a lot to process my experience as well, which is why I'm a huge advocate for using the arts to heal yourself and to express yourself. But yes, I did a lot of internships around policy and talking to congressional members in different states. And then I was a part of the National Foster Care Youth and Alumni Policy Council in Washington, D.C. It's basically made up of 13 to 14 people that have lived foster care experience, and we come together in Washington, D.C. quarterly throughout the year, and you um, develop policy recommendations based on specific priorities that you particularly see that are happening across the board in your state and federally with youth and families. And so my focus was really around cultural awareness, um, autonomy for youth and families, and also really recognizing the space between trauma and healing. So those are a lot of my focuses around youth that have or on the route to age out or get kicked out or transition out of the foster care system, as well as prevention, of course. And so that was a very enlightening experience, and I was a part of that. I was a part of honestly a lot of initiatives, as well as National Foster Youth Institute in 2016. I did, what was it called? It's basically this 4-day program where you get flown out to Washington, D.C. with over 100 current and former foster youth. Foster Youth Shadow Day, Congressional Foster Youth Shadow Day. And I think that was the first time that I realized I could make a difference in policy. And not just me, but like our voices mattered in the space of policy. And because I had this whole, connotation that like people that are in policy, like all of them are just horrible people. They don't care about us, and like they're not going to really listen to us, if we talk about what's really happening. And I was very wrong. I was very, very wrong. And I think many of us at the Capitol talking to different congressional members and in the White House talking to different congressional members realized, they do care. Maybe not everybody, but a lot do. And they simply don't know. They're unaware of what's happening to youth, what's happening to families. And, they're going blind into a situation with an intention to help. And I think that really helped me to see, what's the gap that we really need in our community and in the foster care community, whether it's a child welfare professional or a youth or family member, birth family member. There's a lot that can actually be done to shift what that looks like as far as outcomes positively for all of us. So that was a huge shifter for me. I came back in 2017 with the Foster Youth Shadow Day program as the first lived experience pod leader. It was, I think, 7 of us or 8 of us. And we were in charge of like 16 people in each pod to go pick them up from the airport, everything. And so that also, I think, really highlighted the fact that I could support folks in leadership roles. And so I think there were definitely specific situations in my journey in personally growing and professionally growing that led up to me having the confidence and the experience to be able to say, you know what, I can write this book, and it does matter, and how I write it is going to matter. And I think that's something that everyone can do, is recognizing where you feel and why you feel like you can't do something, And it might be, a past trauma or certain self-doubts, but really recognizing that you can shift that and putting yourself in positions and opportunities to grow, and to heal, so that way you can have space, um, to speak up and to share about things that are important and things that you're passionate about as well. So fast forward to 2020. um, so I had got married in 2019, and I finished an internship at an organization where I was a policy specialist, um, doing a lot of um writing legislation and submitting to Washington, D.C. and other spaces throughout the states. And so from that, I was like, okay, I think I want to take a break from policy because I'm a creative, and I think I had to really own that. And although I can be what I need to be at whatever time, um, I've been challenging myself to like explore the spaces where I feel the most comfortable versus like just kind of forcing myself in spaces to grow, because that's great too, but also like resting and being in your own um, self is healing as well. So in 2020, I knew that I wanted to write a book, and I didn't know which one I wanted to write. So I made a list of different books that I wanted to write throughout my life, and the Black Foster Youth Handbook was one of them, but it wasn't that. I just put like a foster care book. And I knew it was going to be some form of a guide, because I had kind of pitched the idea several years ago to different organizations, but they just said they didn't have the funding for that. So I revisited that idea in 2020. And I was, kind of like, okay, I know I want to do this, but it's probably going to take a while, probably a couple years. I was very like passive about it. And then the pandemic hit in March, and it was kind of like a huge like push after that, because all I could think about, all I was dreaming about were my own experiences as well as other families' experiences, and thinking about, in particular, like if there's a youth, right, and they're in school, they're going through a lot at home, and now there's this announcement that there will be no school. That's what they have to rely on to um, have some kind of refuge from the home life that could be very chaotic and traumatic. Um, Food, being able to have a breakfast and a lunch, all these different things, and, going back into that space, and now you don't have any kind of refuge. You have to stay in that space. Um, that really, really made me very concerned. The second thing that I thought about a lot was about youth that were already in care, and they're not in a great foster home, and now they have to stay there 24/7. They can't talk to their siblings because I don't know why, but the child welfare system is very slow about technology, like not recognizing that you can do Zoom meetings with parents and other things. Especially during that time, I talked to several organizations, and that was a huge issue. And so I was like, oh, this is horrific, like I can't imagine aging out during this time on top of everything else, or getting kicked out, right, during a whole worldwide pandemic. And so that ended up being my focus, and I think my huge call of like, okay, this book has to get done. There's youth literally aging out into a pandemic. Like there has to be something that is a call not only to the youth, but also to the supportive adults, to those foster parents, social workers, caregivers, nonprofit leaders that are serving the youth. And there's a lot that I learned. There's a lot that I learned the hard way. And so let's not learn the hard way if we can. And so I started writing, and I was very angry. And I started running to kind of, I ran every day for like an hour to kind of get a lot of those emotions out, because as we know, trauma lives in the body. So it's important also for those that are interested in writing their own story, or doing some kind of art, make sure you're doing something with your body as well, because that helped me a lot. Like, it was a lot of energy that was just kind of moving all throughout me. And so running was nice. I got it out every single day. So yeah, I started writing the book. I sent it to the editor. I had several dreams as far as the format of how I wanted it to be, or what I thought I wanted it to be, and then in the dreams, it was very clear of what it needed to be. So, I had to go back to my why, and it wasn't about making the readers or the youth angry and um, feeling like they couldn't trust their supportive adults and stuff like that. I wanted it to be like, here, these are the different things that we can do in your experience. This is what happened when, I did it a different way, and it sometimes it worked and other times it didn't work, being very transparent about that. And the main goal for me was that I wanted youth to heal. I wanted them to start that healing process. And thinking about on a global scale, like, I meet folks all the time, and you can tell very quickly when you talk to people who is doing the healing work and who is not doing the healing work. And that can come off as very like, I don't know, heal people, and hurt people hurt people. And so a lot of times I'll be in spaces and people can be extremely well-meaning and have good intentions, but if you're not doing the internal work, and whether you're a youth or you're a nonprofit leader, a social worker, a foster parent, I think that's what is really what can make or break a situation. So I got the edits back. I completely redid the entire book. I completely did the formatting, differently, and added the real success model. From there, there was a lot of other barriers that I had. So there was like the financial barrier of getting the actual book out. And so this was July, right? And I realized this in July, and my launch date was September. So I was like, how am I going to do this? Like, because I decided to go the self-published route. And I was like, well, since this book is really not about my own ego, about, how I want it, how I specifically want it to go and all the other things, it's mainly about what I need the youth to know, and supportive adults that have been asking me all these different questions. Just, here it is in this one particular centered space. Then why don't I ask the people? Why don't I ask them, you know, if they really want this to be out and if they're willing to support it? So I kind of created a campaign, and I was really like, I knew I was gonna have to go hard about it because it was such a short time crunch. But I also had no idea. I didn't have any like funding experience or campaigning background. So it was literally just like cold messaging people, like 200 to 300 people a day, reaching out and telling them about this project, about this guide that is for youth that had the experience of, foster care, and to heal, holistically heal, support them in their transitioning phase. And people started donating, and really within, I would say, 2 weeks of August, I got my goal that I needed to get the rest of the book completed and in good condition, and start sending it out. I think right before then I also did pre-orders, but I didn't get nearly as enough funding through that, so I knew I also needed another way. Yeah, super trial and error, since this was my first time and just trying to figure everything out. But I ended up publishing it on time, and then the sending all the books out and all the things. It became an Amazon bestseller, um, which told me that people really did want and need this book. Um, so yeah, that's definitely what happened with that. And I had my podcast, so just to talk to youth about their experiences through art. And it's evolved a lot since then, but that's kind of how it started.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you for that. I think your experience in your journey of trying to move forward, not in self, but in community, um, and giving something, that pulled a lot out of yourself was huge, was huge. Um, there's one thing I want to touch on, getting ready to, end this out. I know there's a lot that I can ask you and so forth, so I'm trying to, compose it. But you mentioned that you got married in 2019, and you can let me know if this is, no, you don't want to talk about this or whichever. But I've met a lot of foster care alumni and so forth who have went on and been married, have kids, and so forth. Um, how has that journey been, and how important is it to bring a spouse that, can support you in your healing, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, I think it's such a pivotal and core part of, how I've been able to found, my company Soulful Liberation and stay sane somewhat through all these different aspects of, my books and speaking engagements and all the different things. Honestly, um, I think I shared, but even when I was like 15, 16 years old, I knew I wanted to be a wife, right? That was something that was important to me. I went through a lot of not great relationship experiences just because I, one, didn't understand or have um, a clear example of what a healthy relationship was, a healthy marriage was. And so it was a lot of healing and unlearning and um, staying committed to what I said I wanted. So if I said I want to be a wife, I want a husband, I want to have a family, really doing the work to see what that really means and like centering that. So like the past couple of years, that has been a really huge priority for me is creating a sustainable, healthy marriage. And so, although I am a part of these other different aspects of in my career, um, I would say that my marriage is definitely a priority for me, like outside of all of that, because at the end of the day, I think you need to have a strong relationship with the divine creator, God, um, spirit, whatever you acknowledge a higher power to be for you. And I also think you need to have a strong relationship with yourself in understanding what your core values are, who you are as a person, what do you love, how do you love, is the way that you love healthy, is the way that you receive love healthy, and really challenging those different aspects of yourself. And so to extend yourself and to become one with another person in a marriage, um, it's very much you have to understand like what your purpose is and make sure that's in an alignment with the other person, because that's what you're going to be drawing strength from, right? Like you both are drawing strength from each other. When one is, not feeling too well, the other one is there to step up and support and, be like, here I am. You guys both can't not know what the vision is or what the purpose is. And then, when someone is not doing well, they're not feeling well as humans, that you're just kind of, I don't know, flopping around and confused about like what to do next, who to look to, what to look to. So for me, I think it's something that needs to be a priority, if you want it to work long term. Now, I'm still considered a newlywed. We've been married for going on 3 years, but I think for me, the initial connection, and even this past 3 years, has been the focus of healing together and individually, connecting to our vision and our shared purpose, and really prioritizing time with one another. Because yeah, I mean, he's not just my partner in this life. Like, he's my husband, he's my support system, the other half of my soul. Like, we can go deep, but there's a lot there. And I think, like, that's something that, even with like our generation, I think it's important that we still see the value in having a marriage and love that is extended with commitment.
Definitely. Thank you. And I know, excuse me, I know that that was an on the spot question, and so forth, but I thought it was very important because I've been talking to a lot of people and they have told me certain different aspects of relationships, and I see a consistent similarity that relationships, when we start that approach to that in our journey, it seems to be tough sometimes. It seems to, we seem to put sometimes unrealistic expectations on it and get trapped in that. So I'm glad that you were able to share your experience, and the fact that you know having an understanding of healing, you know, in that relationship is important. So thank you for that. My last couple questions. Time is winding down. This has been a very great treat having you on here, and I'm honored to be able to speak with you and so forth about your journey, about your book, about what is next and so forth. So with that being said, what is next for you? You've gotten so many different awards. I believe you got an award from the NAACP, or I feel like I just butchered that, but I always mess that up. But you got an award from them. You've been on many different speaking engagements and so forth. So, what is next on this journey for you?
Yeah, so I released the I Am Success workbook, which is a youth companion guide to the Black Cross Youth Handbook, December 23rd of 2021. And so currently I'm working on the audiobook for the Black Cross Youth Handbook. And I just became a certified holistic health coach. I think it was the first week of February. So I'm very excited about that because right now I'm working with a team to develop a holistic healing program for transition age youth. And so it's already based on the Black Cross Youth Handbook and the I Am Success workbook with the real success model: real, root, envision, ascension, and liberation. And so I'm very excited about that because it's not only for transition age, as in 16 to 24, but also for the alumni. Because I think a lot of times people say, like, oh, you're already old enough, you should know all these different things, and you should, right? All these shoulds. And it's just kind of like, and where has there ever been a space to do those things, all those shoulds?
Definitely.
And that's something that's really important to me in the spirit of breaking generational patterns, generational curses, and the focus of really truly holistically healing and discovering freedom for ourselves. There's too many of us that are in bondage to either our mental health issues, disparities, traumas, physical health traumas, I mean, spiritual health, financial health. And I think for me, that's really my focus right now, in at least for the next 2 to 3 years.
Definitely. Thank you for that. You mentioned something that I think is very important. We put an expectation, policy, legislation wise, even agencies in certain states and so forth, that once that person reach 18, they're good. and so forth. Once that person reach 24, 25, they're good. But we have to realize that the brain stops is scientifically stops developing at age 25. But if you've been through so much trauma and so forth, we also know psychologically and clinically that a person can be stagnant in the place of that trauma. So how at 25, 24 policy, legislation wise, and through all these different agencies, we're expecting someone who has been through abuse and neglect, sexual, whether physical, verbal, emotional, or, whatever kind of abuse, to be at a place of security and stability and non-dysfunction, and functionality at that age, and that's something that I've been advocating about, and I'm seeing similarities in other people. It's an unrealistic expectation, and we need to recognize that people are going to be in their 30s healing. People are going to be in their 40s healing, 50s, dare I say, and more. Like, there's no time limit on healing, and we need to recognize that and support that, with no judgment, no judgment. So thank you for that. Lastly, what tips and tidbits and lasting comments do you have to give us?
Yeah, I think what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about the quote that we use: "Self-discipline is self-love," by Will Smith. And so there's actually, I would invite anybody that's listening to this to go to YouTube after you listen to this and listen to the other amazing episodes from Michael. Go to YouTube and put "Self-discipline is self-love," Will Smith, and listen to that entire video of him talking, because that video in itself in 2020, every single day I listened to it, because I was going through a lot of things on top of writing my book and stuff, and it helped me to stay centered. And self-discipline is self-love, looking into your life, looking into some of your really big dreams, and really identifying what is the gap. And a lot of times we're looking for the magic pill, the right answer, and all the other things, but it's different for everybody. And there's different things that are similar to facilitate that healing, or facilitate that step-by-step process for yourself to get to where you want to go. But a big part of that is the self-discipline. And that doesn't necessarily mean a negative, in a negative light, but really recognizing and holding yourself accountable. Or if you another part of holding yourself accountable could be the fact that you recognize that you need to be held accountable, and you don't have to be the one to do it. So going and looking at someone else that's in your life and asking them to be your accountability partner on whatever project, whatever dream you want to fulfill, even if it's as big as, like, you want to own a home, or you want to buy some land, and really committing yourself to that process. That's self-discipline, right? Or getting up and making sure you're taking a shower and you're taking care of yourself, or scheduling time to rest and not be on social media for several different hours, getting lost on TikTok. I called myself out, but it's all good. We really have to recognize what's really important to us, what is our priorities really, and looking at our schedule, looking on the day-to-day tasks and things that we're actually doing, and is that really getting us to where we want ourselves to be, or is it pulling us back? Know that you're not alone, but at the end of the day, you are in charge of you. You have a choice, and you have to make that choice. Whether or not you want to fulfill those dreams, really make them a reality, or is it just talk?
Thank you. Thank you. I just love that you are the embodiment of my title, the resilient voice, but also beyond, or working on self, and helping others find that beyond space. Like, okay, you have the resilient voice, you have the experience, but now let's get past that. Let's talk
Yeah.
about the success. Let's talk about the healing. Let's talk about, the relationship. Let's talk about, physical and all these other different aspects that are part of life. And that is the big piece about, this podcast and what I want to bring you. I don't want to just showcase the person, you know, I want to showcase the journey, the experience, and the lessons in between, because I'm a big person that believes that failures, rejection, bad spots, tests, trials, whatever you call them, they hold very key lessons for us to learn. And once we grasp those lessons in those moments, or even after those moments, or you find a space in your life where you're finally at a place where you no longer feel yourself getting in situational depression when you're in a struggle. You find yourself in a place of peace because you know that that struggle is going to finally be over at a certain point. It's not always going to be like that. So thank you for joining me on this. I appreciate it. I am so excited to continue following you on your journey and seeing all the work that you're doing and so forth. And I only know, I know that this is only the beginning for you. You have a very powerful voice, in the foster care community and so forth. And I just want to thank you for showcasing, the importance of understanding culture, in the foster care community, understanding mental health and holistic health and so forth. I think that is very important. But yeah, as I get ready to close out, thank you, guys that are listening to this. Thank you for being on here. It's a complete honor. I say my spiel every time. COVID is out here. It is real. It is here. It ain't going nowhere. I might be exaggerating, but for now, please stay safe out there. If you're thinking about getting vaccinated or whichever, do your research, get it done. Don't procrastinate about it. If you're not getting vaccinated, your choice. I'm not going to get political. But whether you're vaccinated, non-vaccinated, wear your mask. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. Wash your hands, sanitize, disinfect and so forth, because it takes a village. We all are part of this big community called the United States of America. And we all got to take care of each other. And the only way we can take care of each other is taking care of ourselves and then our smaller communities, which is our family. So please take heed of that. Please stay safe. I love you guys, and I appreciate you guys for following me, and so forth. You guys have a great night, a great evening, a great morning. Whenever you listen to it, just let it be great. And this is Resilient Voices and Beyond. Thank you.